All right, so this week I have the privilege to introduce our featured speaker. Many of us here at BNI know how humble Kathleen can be, which was very prevalent when I learned it doesn't come easy for her to pinpoint what she's personally most proud of. But after really pulling it out of her, I wanted to share with you all that she is proud of starting her own business in an industry that isn't always welcoming to positive action. HR is making a movement, but when she started, that was not the case. She's doing good things for people while she recognizes maybe she's not necessarily changing the whole world. In her small way, she's proud to be making a difference and making things better for businesses and for the employees that are within them. One thing that you may not know about Kathleen is that she's passionate about announcing for the local Rose City Rollers, the roller derby. She announces in-house and on live stream where teams of people come from all over the country and even all over the world. Another secret hobby that Kathleen has that she's kind of reluctant to share, so it's a secret, is her interest in sewing. That's again our little secret because she doesn't love being asked to help with sewing projects and repairs. So keep it a secret. Last but not least, Kathleen is a member of a local women-only choir group called Resonate. She auditioned when she moved here to Portland and she was accepted. It is my pleasure today to introduce Kathleen Gabriel with Gabriel HR to learn more from her about recruiting and retention and getting the best ROI for your employees.
Thank you for that kind introduction, Whitney. Thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen here and put this in the proper order. Can you see it? Okay, great. So today I'm going to be talking about recruiting and retention, two of the major parts of getting the best return on investment from your employees. So what are recruiting and retention? Well, pretty simply, they are hiring people and making sure they stick around. Why is that important? So hiring and recruiting can sometimes be, especially when you're a small business, done kind of ad hoc. Like, how hard can it be? All I need to do is just find someone and hire them. Big whoop. However, there are gains from having a strategically thought out process and losses from not having that process. If you think ahead of time of who you're looking for, why, what their future is, what what kind of marketing you're putting into it, you'll find the right people quickly. Your employees will be able to focus on their regular work. This means that you will have the effects of increased revenue and reduced costs. If you don't have this pre-thought in place, it's pretty much guaranteed that you and your team are going to waste a bunch of time. That means losses in productivity and revenue. That also means that the role is going to be open longer, so the work that you need done isn't getting done. And you run the risk of increased turnover from the frustrations that are increased in that time loss and productivity loss. And you increase the risk of losing reputation because not only the people who might be leaving are out in the marketplace saying, oh, it's kind of a mess over there. Also, if you have a chaotic interview process, any candidates who come into you will leave and say, yeah, maybe I don't want to work there because they can't interview. Not great. So what can I do to help? Well, on the recruiting side, I do act as a full sourcing recruiter. I can find your candidates for hard to fill roles and also provide pipelines of ready candidates for always needed roles. And those are roles like, if you have a customer service support center, you're always going to need new customer support people. Don't make that a one and done every time. That should always have a pipeline. In addition, I provide on the HR side strategically driven processes and services. Now, I mentioned before things like thinking about the role, thinking about the future of the role. Ensuring that all of your interviewers know why they're there, know what their part of the process is, that they know who the decision maker is, that the candidate is always being contacted and knows where they are in the process. Make sure that every aspect of your recruiting is reasonable and locked down and effective. This will reduce your time to hire. This, when you reach the end of the process and you're evaluating candidates, you know that you have the right information to make the right choice. I always have communication between candidates and the hiring team. One of the ways that we lose candidates is letting them drift off, letting them not know that we're excited to have them talking to us. And so they're like, well, I'll take this other job instead. I always include diversity, equity, and inclusivity initiatives that are customized to my clients, and I do candidate reference checks. Once we reach the point of making an offer, you want to make a great offer to your candidate. You want a readable, complete, legally compliant offer letter. You want your offer to be comparable with the marketplace that you're in. You'd think it'd be obvious, but it is not always thought out to have a start date that works for both the employee and the company. And then again, always communicating excitement that this candidate is joining. I also manage background screens with legally compliant vendors and processes, and I ensure that we're doing useful screening types like past work and education, criminal history, and not doing potentially not legally compliant background screens like credit checks. So employee retention. Why is it important to keep your employees? Employee retention, if you have high retention, that means that your great employees are staying and your poor fit employees leave. And if that happens, you're going to have higher productivity because you don't have to educate people as much. They're sticking around. They know the things. You don't have the replacement costs when people leave. And this creates greater engagement. Greater engagement creates higher morale, which is increased revenue, which makes people say, oh, I love being here more. That creates higher retention. That is your virtuous cycle that you're aiming for. On the flip side, what does high turnover get you? High turnover bleeds money. High turnover means you have both direct costs and indirect costs and additional losses. When you need to replace an employee who has left, that costs you between 50 to 60% of that employee's salary on average. And those direct costs are hiring an external recruiter, using internal recruiters, posting job ads, all the additional administrative work that goes into making that hire. And honestly, a lot of times you're going to pay more for a new person that you're replacing. So when an employee says, hey, the marketplace is a little more money than I'm making, I would like a little bit more. And you say, no, hit the road. Well, the next person you hire you may have to hire them at that marketplace rate. And so you've just lost more money. And then additionally, indirect costs cost 90 to 200% on top of your direct costs. And that's establishing your interview processes, doing the whole process, evaluating resumes, scheduling and holding interviews, making decisions. The loss of revenue of that work isn't being done, or it's being done on top of your other employees' work. A loss of institutional knowledge can be huge, especially for your higher level, longer lasting employees. When they go, their brain goes. So you don't have all that institutional knowledge. And then when you hire a new employee, they have ramp up time. So they're not going to be 100% productive from their first day, because of course they're not. So that time it takes for them to ramp up is loss of money. And then if you do have high turnover, the employee to stay will be affected by that turnover that's happening around them. When you have high turnover, who wants to stay in an environment where everyone's leaving? especially if the best people are leaving. So that kills your employee morale. And low morale means, well, you're going to get lower productivity. Lower productivity means you're going to get reduced revenue. And then you get your vicious cycle of, yeah, more people are going to want to leave. So you get higher turnover. High turnover bleeds money. So then what can I do to help for turnover? I do employee onboarding programs. An ideal onboarding program starts on the first day of employment and stops kind of never. An intentional onboarding program is intense for the first week, pretty robust for the first month, a good check-in at 3 months, and goes on in an intentional way for 12 full months. This keys into performance management, because if you've been onboarded properly and you have constant productive communication with your manager, that means it's easier to correct poor performance, to praise good performance. And especially if you get into manager training, one of the things about management is it's usually the least taught skill. So let's teach your managers skills so that when people move up in the organization, we're planning for succession. I get compensation in line, including benefits and perks, to make sure that within your organization and your marketplace, you are compensating appropriately. That all rolls into corporate culture, because corporate culture, if you have built an intentional culture and you're hiring the people that fit in it, then that will increase your retention. And also termination and offboarding, because that is surprisingly important for keeping your good people, is understanding when and how to terminate and offboard people, because that increases the quality of your reputation both internally and externally. So recruiting and retention is hiring people and making sure they stick around so that you as a business can reduce your costs and increase your revenue. And fractional HR services can help you do that in all kinds of ways. So thank you all so much.